The marchers called it Leyland's last chance. More than 2,000 workers with their jobs on the line taking to the streets in a gesture of defiance. The receivers in charge here have enough cash to keep Leyland and its sister plant in Chorley running through the weekend. After that, it could be the end of one of the most famous names in British motor manufacturing. Spontaneous applause for the Leyland workers. They're demanding government intervention, and that means immediate help from the president of the Board of Trade.
They're prepared to use taxpayers' money for their ever-lengthening dole queue, and they're not prepared taxpayers' money to invest in working-class people.
Marchers directed their anger at Leyland's Conservative Club. This town is at the heart of a Tory constituency, but the threat of thousands of redundancies is concentrating minds on a job-saving campaign more akin to miners than motor workers. Leyland's receivers will be working through the weekend. There's even the possibility of a management buyout, but their chances of coming up with a strategy for Leyland's survival are at best slim. Today should have been payday for Leyland's workers. That's now been postponed until next week. Despite this show of anger, it could be the final pay packet they receive.
Well, this afternoon, 120 staff at one of Leyland Daf's suppliers in Lancashire were told they're being laid off. Live now to Howell Jones. Howell, it hasn't taken long for Leyland Daf's difficulties to work their way through.
Dermot, this company, BDL Engineering, makes components for Leyland trucks, and it stands to reason that if no trucks are being made, there's no need for the components. About 120 people were laid off this afternoon, and as they left the factory, perhaps for the last time, they told me how they felt about being laid off because of Leyland's problems.
Well, I feel a bit let down, actually. I mean, they're still running and we're off next week. We don't know our future. Simple as that. It's like a kick in the teeth, isn't it?
I think we've been sold down, dragged down with them.
Are you expecting the receivers to come up with anything over the weekend?
Well, the receivers brought in to sort out Leyland will be in Holland this weekend, talking to their Dutch counterparts and to the Leyland Daf management. In a separate move, the chief executive of Chorley has written to the head of the giant Japanese firm Mitsubishi, saying, in effect, only your money can save us now. A desperate move, you'll agree, but these are desperate times for Leyland.
Howell, thank you. The first major industrial strike in Britain since the start of the recession began on Clydeside today. 1,300 shipyard workers downed tools against the advice of their union after rejecting a
The unions hope it'll force the government to intervene to save more than 5,000 jobs.
After the shock, the anger, which is felt not just by the nearly 3,000 DAF workers in Lancashire, but the many others for whom the truck-making firm is a strategic employer in the northwest. The depth of resentment here is recognised by the local Tory MP, Robert Atkins. There's much contempt for the stance he's adopted, support for a private sector sell-off or more aid from the banks, but not from the government.
When asked the question, would I support taxpayers' money being used as a subsidy, the answer to it is no, because I don't happen to think that that is the answer. We've had £1.3 billion of taxpayers' money over the years for long-term restructuring, and it's not produced the result.
Although encouraged by the emergency aid from the banks, DAF workers reserve most of their anger for government politicians.
Resltine and that Mr Atkinson, they don't care really, like. They're all born with a silver spoon shoved in their mouth, like. I could say somewhere else, but I won't lie, you know what I mean?
Union leaders are bitterly critical of the argument that government shouldn't bail out private industry and its employees.
Without workers, without a manufacturing base, without workers in Britain, then who pays for the health service, the education service, the welfare of the elderly, and so on? And without that manufacturing base, without a working base, this country's nothing.
Leyland has been producing vehicles for nearly 100 years. The message from today's protest rally was, whether private or public capital was called to the rescue, that tradition must not be allowed to die.
The Prime Minister has refused